Get ready to uncover how schools manipulate students' thoughts, stifle their potential, and how politicians steal money in the future of America from kids. Welcome to the JB Sill Show.
All right there, everybody. Welcome back to Operation Anti-Indoctrination. I'm your host, JB. It's great to be here. I have to kind of distract myself from what's going on in the news right now, and also from what's going on with myself, because, well, I may or may not have broken my arm, so, I have to do the show today, so we got to do the show. We got a lot to get into. It's going to be a great show, even though it's been a little bit of a slow news week. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but I really want to get into in this episode. What I want to get into is basically the core of how and also why schools dumb kids down. And we're gonna cover all of that. It's gonna be very epic. Make sure you stay tuned to the very end. I'm looking forward to it because I would like to focus on something that's not the news or my broken arm. So that's pretty great. But first, one quick story, because I had to do one quick. You gotta do one quick story, right? So we have a story here, which is from The Blaze, and the story is, quote, "Don't tread on me" image considered racial harassment. Catholic school allegedly orders conservative students to nix Gadsden flag, unquote. So basically, you have this high school. Okay, it's a high school in California. Shocker, high school in California. I know who would have guessed it was California. Who would have guessed? But we have now the Gadsden flag is racial harassment or something. I'm not 100% sure how that happened, but yeah, let's see. I guess, I don't know. I guess they think that's, you can't do that. You just can't have. It's because of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, I guess. Because I guess "don't tread on me" violates that. I have no idea, but it just shows the descent into madness that we're in. But anyway, I want to get past that quickly because we have a lot of more. I have a lot more important stuff to talk about. A lot more important, much more significant, much more relevant to everybody. Literally everybody. This applies to everybody. And what I'm about to say is probably one of the most important things you'll ever hear, ever. Like, just the way schools dumb you down and why. Also, the why factor is very important. But the how and the why is what we're going to be talking about today. So first of all, schools dumb you down. The worst has to be with literacy and reading, because I don't want to say that knowing how to read is everything, but it is certainly a massive part of what you need to intellectually develop. And at all, you have to know how to read. You have to be able to do it well. You have to be able to defend your views, to say, okay, this is why I think this, and I, maybe read it here or something. But you have to be able to exercise that self-defense, and by producing illiteracy, the school basically deprives you of that right, of that human right of defending your the ideas, your ideology. School robs you of that. They rob you of it, truly. That's what they do. So how do they do this? Well, as you hopefully know, English is an alphabetic language. However, we are not taught reading as though it were alphabetic. We are taught reading as though it were holistic or ideographic. In other words, we are taught English as though it were Chinese or hieroglyphics, where it's several thousand characters instead of 26 letters with 42 sounds total, and that's how you learn the words. But no, that's not what we do. What we do in America largely is we teach to memorize words like little pictures. So if you see "the," you're not actually seeing "the," you're just seeing a picture in the shape of "the." You don't learn the alphabet very much. You don't learn the sounds of the letters very much, if at all. And that produces illiteracy, because you cannot compare a ideographic system like Chinese to a alphabetic system. But we learn English as though it were that ideographic system like Chinese. That's how we learn it. So that produces illiteracy, and that's why illiteracy is extraordinarily high in youth populations, especially in the cities. You have 2/3 of students at risk of becoming illiterates, basically. You have half our population can't or doesn't read at all. That's not good. And by the way, even the kids that do learn how to read, the ones that do learn how to read don't generally like it very much because the process is so laborious and so difficult and tedious and painful that you just don't pick up a book again unless you absolutely have to. So that's another way they do it. It's just they make it so terrible. That's probably the worst of it. Now we got to talk about the new math. The new math is very much like reading because we learn basically in school, we learn that, and this is true, that math is reasoning, it's logic, it's like a puzzle, right? But we're taught math as though it's 100% memorization. Now, it's true that there is some memorization in math. You got to know the times tables, you got to know some formulas probably, but the way we're taught math is basically that it's all memorization, that we replace the common sense and logic that is integral to math. We replace that with just blunt memorization of questions. And that is why so many kids, they abhor math. They could not hate it more if they had. They are furious at it. They would rather do anything else because we're taught it totally the wrong way. And one example of this is, and this is kind of the classic example, is when you're taught to do so-called long multiplication, where basically in the new math, you have to learn all these different ways of solving a problem and then do it whatever way they want you to. You have to remember all the different ways of solving it and then do it however they want you to. You don't get to pick your best way. You don't get to do that. You have to pick their way. And then with the old math, basically, you have the option to learn different methods. You pick which one is best, and you kind of go from there. And you learn the formula, not the problem. See, when you're with the new math, you don't learn the way you do it. You just learn the process with individual problems. I hope you can see what I'm saying here. But basically, you're not learning the way to do it. You're just learning the methodology for individual problems with the new math. And by the way, this all fits into something called mastery learning, which is the newest, greatest concept. That's not, who would be against mastery learning? But it turns out that mastery learning is basically where you give a kid a concept, and then you just make them spend hours, days, months, whatever, memorizing it until they can pass a test on it, until they've remembered all the bubbles. Not that they've connected them or anything, but that they've memorized them. They've memorized everything. And that's what the school does. And that's mastery learning. Mastery learning is the newest, hottest method of teaching. It's everywhere. It's how I'm taught in school. Or I was taught. I do homeschooling now. That's not what I'm doing isn't that much better. But anyway, that's how it's done, is mastery learning. Again, that makes kids hate school because mastery learning destroys your curiosity, destroys your ingenuity, your biological alignment towards learning, which does exist. You want to learn as a person. You want to attain knowledge. Human beings are naturally curious. It's just that the school stamps that out over the course of a couple years, and then they mold you into whatever they want you to be. But anyway, and then the rest that kind of goes for history too. And then with all of it, really, you have what's called outcome-based education or school to work, where basically you're being set up for a certain job. In this case, in most of the schools, you're set up to go to college. College is the ultimate place you need to go because you need to get some liberal arts degree on who knows what, or you need to go to a gender studies class or something like that. That's what you've got to do. And that's just, it's all horrible because it makes students hate learning so much. It's abhorrent what they do. It's reprehensible, the teaching methods they use. So that's basically my breakdown of what they do and what they're doing wrong here. You have the outcome-based education, you have mastery learning, you have the new math, the whole word, all that fun stuff. Now, the next question here, the next and perhaps even more relevant question is why? Why is this happening? And that's a 5-hour conversation right there, but I'm going to try to simplify it down as best I can. So basically, everything in the school system, and if you have any questions on this, you can email me, jbsilshow@gmail.com. But basically, the whole idea of the school system is to produce a utopia of sorts. A utopia where everybody is going to be happy. The cities will be beautiful. We will have short work weeks. Everything will be great. It's sort of like the Democratic Socialists of America. Free housing, mass welfare, all that good stuff. And if you want to understand the true agenda of schooling, if you really want to understand it, then you have to read a book called Looking Backward, which was written in 1888, I believe, and it depicts a communist America in the year 2000, which has everything I just described. That's the book which explains the agenda behind the school system, because it shows what they were working towards. It shows why they justified what they did, what these guys who I'm going to get into justified what they did, because they were in pursuit of this great utopia, which would supposedly, make everything perfect. It's just that in order to get that, everyone had to be made dumber. Riddle me that one, but anyway. So the leader of this was John Dewey, and he was also accompanied by Edward Thorndike. They were the intellectual leaders of this. John Dewey, famous philosopher and psychologist, lived from 1859 to 1952. Very, very famous in his time. Still is quite famous today among academic circles. He's basically the father of socialism in America in a lot of ways. But he was the one that kind of got this train rolling. He got the progressive education, new math, whole word, mastery, outcome-based education. He got that whole train rolling. And he destroyed traditional education with the help of a lot of friends, by the way. He was not alone in this. By no means was he alone. He had so many friends, so many colleagues. It makes Game of Thrones look simple, and I haven't even seen this show, but I hear it's a little complicated. But anyway, so you had all these guys who had this in their minds. They had an absolute blank check to do whatever they wanted, because in their minds that it would all be worth it in the end because of the utopia that would be, and everyone would love them in the end. They'd be famous in the end. We'd have this perfect society, all in the end. Now, what made these guys so much more dangerous than the socialists of today is because the socialists of today, perhaps because of the school system, by the way, have lost all patience. They want it now. They want this glorious revolution now. They want the proletariat to rise up against the bourgeoisie, and that is just not. Most people are not going to support that. But these guys were a lot more tacit. They were a lot more patient. They were a lot smarter, to be quite frank. But they knew that this was not going to happen overnight. They knew that they had to implement an institution where they could dumb people down, make them into their servants, whether they realized it or not. Make them into servants, a servile class, so that eventually they would have this great utopia. And that's the reasoning for all this. That's why this was done. And you can go back to all the quotes. These guys, they wrote about what they were doing. They did not shy away from it. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly what they wanted. Just read the stuff. I don't know if I might put some stuff in the description or something, but you have to read the stuff they wrote. That's crucial, because it tells you what they're after. It tells you how they're going to do it by implementing this draconian education, all in the name of progressivism. By the way, it's kind of funny. It's all in the name of progressivism, and it's been a disaster. It's all been an incredible disaster. But basically, and I've kind of come to this conclusion: the two really why they're doing this, or how they're doing this. I don't know, but the two purposes are basically inducing the correct reactions in children through a lot of this dumbing down, and the dumbing down is related to both these reasons, but purposes. But you have inducing certain reactions. This is done through a lot of experimental psychology in the school system, and you also have a lot of other things like stimuli, and then the illiteracy, and then you also have, and this is perhaps even creepier, selectively breeding and regulating, you heard that right, selectively breeding and regulating the success of children in order to basically perfect humanity. Again, all for the utopia. It's all for the utopia. They want to perfect humanity in order to have this one. Again, if you want to know what they're after, read Looking Backward, or at least read a Wikipedia summary of it. I'm sure that I guarantee it'll be worth your time, because it tells you exactly what they're after. And by the way, the book is gripping. I mean, I've read it. The book is it makes you kind of believe it for a hot minute. You kind of really believe it. Then your brain kicks back in and you're like, no, that's not possible. But it does make you believe it for it really hooks you for a minute. And then you realize that it's all garbage. But yeah, that's the reason. And again, the leader was John Dewey, but he had a lot of help. He had help from the Carnegie Foundation, from the Rockefeller Foundation. He had help from his friends like James McKean Cattell, Charles Judd, G. Stanley Hall, James Earl Russell. He had help from the Soviets. He had help from Pavlov. He had help from everybody in the academic world at the time. And they pushed it through. No, they pushed it through, all right. They pushed it through the American people were asleep at the time. They were asleep. And this really started getting into the schools in the 1940s. That's when it really started getting into the schools. The illiteracy, the new math was a little bit later. The new math was kind of from the 50s to the 70s it got in there. And then you had outcome-based education in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and mastery learning maybe about the same time, perhaps a little later. I'm not 100% sure. But it's all been very slow. It's all been very, very gradual. Admit it, it's been even slower than these progressive guys thought. They thought it would take a while, but they didn't think it would take this long. Maybe by the year 2000 or 2010 it would be all done. But it's taken a while, and America is slowly going to the grave while it's happening. What do you think is driving the destruction of our culture? What do you think is driving this mass violence we've seen? What do you think drove the election of Donald J. Trump? You may not like him. I don't blame you if you don't like him, but you have to ask why. You have to ask why this is happening. You can't just say, oh, it's a bunch of racists or it's a bunch of extremists. You have to ask why. Because usually there's a little more nuance to it than just that. There's a little more nuance than just they're terrible people. You may still disagree with it, and that's fine. But, it's as Aristotle, it's the mark of an educated man to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. And we're certainly not able to do that, but basically you have to try to understand why this happened. Otherwise, nothing changes. Otherwise, if we don't understand why this happened, nothing changes. And we're seeing the effects from that now. This is all a reaction to it. And I think, I may be wrong here, but I think that a lot of people realize this. I think a lot of people, they detect an agenda, but they don't quite know what that agenda is. I mean, let's face it. We all know something's wrong. We all know something is wrong. We all know something's quite not right in our society. We all know something terrible has happened. We just don't know what. Now I'm here trying to tell you what's happened because it's so important that we know. It's the survival of America depends on it. The survival of America depends on it. And I don't see how we move forward unless somehow we get people to wake up to that. And I will do an episode on that at some point. But I think I have a few ideas as to how to do that, and I've already shared some of them. But I do have a few ideas of how we're gonna wake people up. But I mean, I would love to make this my life's work, is which kind of waking not only parents but also kids up on the school system, because they're the ones that really need to know what's up. They're the ones that are in the system. They're in the horrible system. They're the victims. All right, I guess we're running out of time here, so gotta kind of bring it to a close here. But I hope that helped you understand just what's happening. It's very important to know. Hope you'll have a better rest of your day than I will. But yeah. So if you have any questions, again, email is jbssoulshow@gmail.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please do leave a like and subscribe. If you're on anything, you can share the video with somebody. Start with your friend. Start with your best friend. Share this video with your best friend. That's right. Whoever it may be. All right, then. Well, until next time, I've been your host, JB. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.